preparing the live stream. I'm not yet recording. If your classmates are on YouTube, please do notify them that. Okay, so we're now starting our live. Okay, so for the second module, what we'll be discussing once again, as I introduced to you, is the functions of language. So how do language function? So we mentioned already the meaning of what language is, the characteristics of a language. So now we'll be focusing on its function. Okay, so there are different functions of language depending on the linguist, but we will be focusing only on two linguists, Jakobson and Jeffrey Leech. Actually, there are many linguists who propose the different functions of language, but um, for as for the introduction of what the language is, of the functions of the language, we'll be just focusing on Roman Jakobson and Jeffrey Leech functions of language. So let's see how do they differ and how are they similar in terms of the different functions that we will be enumerating for this afternoon. So these are the different functions of language according to Jakobson. So Phatic Function, the Poetic Function, Metalingual Function, Emotive Function, Connective Function, and Referential Function. So let's discuss these functions or six functions one by one. So let's have first the Phatic function. So according to Jakobson, Phatic function is language for the sake of interaction and is therefore associated with contact channel or factor. Channel factor. So the Phatic function can be observed in greetings, casual discussions of the weather, particularly with strangers. Not only just in casual discussions of the weather, but more of different casual discussions. So it also provides the keys to open, meaning to say you would like to begin the conversation, to maintain, or you would like uh, to contain the conversation or verify or close the communication channel. So it usually happens, let's say for instance, you are talking to someone and then you would like to begin your conversation to that person. So let's say you are inside the tricycle and then you're talking to the stranger and then you say to the stranger that, "Sir, have you noticed that the cloud is dark?" Okay, you're already opening a conversation on that aspect. When you say that, "Sir, have you noticed that the cloud is dark?" So that is already an example of a phatic function because you are opening a conversation. Okay, opening a conversation. So for examples, when you say hello, let's say you answer, you're calling on a telephone and then you call to someone and then you said hello, may I talk to Mr. Castillo? So on that aspect alone, on that example alone is already an example of phatic function. Okay, and there are some instances where while the person is talking, we just say okay as our response. So it's only our way of saying that okay, go on, I'm listening, I'm hearing you, just go on with with what you are saying and I'm acknowledging what you are saying. So you just say okay. Okay, and some fillers, although fillers such as when during the conversation is also a phatic function. And of course, when you're closing a conversation, when you say goodbye, diba, right after you call someone, you say goodbye. So that is a way of saying that that is also a phatic function. So again, these are the things that you really need to look into when you are categorizing utterances on a certain conversation. So it's a phatic function when you're opening a conversation, when you're maintaining a conversation, when you are verifying. So let's say, for example, when you say okay with a question mark, so that is a verification. When you say okay without a question mark, you just okay, you're just giving a response to what the person is saying. That means you are maintaining the conversation. Or when you say goodbye, closing the conversation. So again, um, those are the things that you really need to look at when you're referring to phatic function. Opening a conversation, maintaining the conversation, verifying the information that the person is telling you, and when you're closing a certain conversation. This is applicable not only on casual conversation but also in formal occasion. Okay, phatic function. So that is the first function of language according to Jakobson. Then we have poetic function. So from the terms of poetic, it sounds like a metaphorical. So the poetic function focuses on the message for its own sake. So the code itself and how it is used and is the operative function in poetry as well as slogan. So we need to say it is a metaphorical or figurative way of getting the information. So there are some people who will be telling us some figurative languages that are, let's say, for instance, that has two meanings, mga double meanings. So it's a poetic function. When we go beyond to the literal meaning of what the person is saying, that is a poetic function. Okay, so um, let's say yung mga pahaging sa tao, yung pagpaparinig sa tao, di ba? May mga double meaning, sounds like that. Yung mga green jokes, ayan, may pagka-poetic function yun. Because again, you do not focus on the literal meaning of what the person is saying. You are pertaining to what the person is intended to say. So that's why we say the message for its own sake. The message for its own sake. The figurative aspect of conversation. Okay, let's see. Meron atong narito. Yes, it includes idiom. It also includes idiom, idiomatic expressions. Poetic function din siya. Okay, so for as long as certain words, sometimes diba, during the casual conversation, others will joke green jokes that have hidden meanings. So that is also poetic function. Idiomatic expressions, poetic function. Okay, the use of figures of speech, figurative languages. Okay, so that is a poetic function. That's why it is termed as poetic function. Because as we all know, when we talk of poetry, it always has its hidden meaning. Okay, so that's where the term poetic function is or was derived. Okay, then we have now the metalingual function. Metalingual function explains the use of language, what Jakobson calls code to discuss or describe itself. If poetic function is figurative, metalingual function is literal. Okay? So what you intend to say is what you really meant on what you're saying. If poetic function is figurative, metalingual is not. It is literal meaning of what you are saying. Okay, so kaya sabi ni Jakobson dyan, what Jakobson calls code to discuss or describe itself. Describe itself. The language itself, the literal meaning of that particular language used. Okay, again, when we're pertaining to language here, we're not only referring to English language. Okay, so it's a diverse one, be it Spanish or Portuguese, Chinese, Nihongo, etc. Okay. Then we have emotive function. Emotive, from the terms of emote. So relates to the addresser and is best exemplified by interjections and other sound changes that do not alter the denotative meaning. When we talk of denotative meaning, that is the denotata or the literal meaning of what you're saying of an utterance, but do add information about the addresser's internal state. So let's say, for example, when you say I love you, diba, there are different ways to say I love you. Sometimes you can say it in a sweet way. Say I love you. Or some would say I love you. Although you're using the same term, I love you, but the way you say it is actually affecting the meaning of the sentence or the meaning of the state. It's different from a poetic function. Okay? Because in emotive function, what is affecting the meaning of the statement is how you say it. Okay? It's how you say it, the emotive function. So during the utterances, let's say, when you say someone, I love you, I love you. Okay, you can say it in a different way, but although you're saying I love you, it means that somehow you're angry or you're just somehow forced to say it. Okay, so something like that. When you say salamat, pero if you're very much sincere, you can really feel from what the person is saying, salamat, oh, thank you very much. And you know that if the person is only just pretending to say thank you because of the way the person says it. So it's an emotive function. Okay, so again, um, it's different from a poetic function because again in an emotive function it is the tone or the how the person say it is affecting the meaning of the statement. Kaya sabi dyan, best exemplified by interjections. Yung interjection, wow, that's an interjection. Example of interjection, wow. And other sound changes. Okay? And other sound changes. So again, that is emotive function. Next, we have connective function. Engages the addressee. Okay, the addressee, the receiver. Directly and best illustrated by vocatives and imperatives. When we talk of connective function, just think of imperatives. Meaning to say, you are instructing someone to do something. So let's say, for example, okay, go to bed. You're instructing someone to go to bed. Okay, eat your food. Dress appropriately. So you're instructing someone to do the said action because you are engaging the addressee or the receiver of the action to perform a certain action. So for our example, Tom, come inside and eat. So you're instructing the subject Tom to come inside and eat. So that's what we mean by connective function. It's more of imperatives. Diba? We have the imperative sentence, which means you are giving command or instruction to someone. So that is connective function. Okay, when you ask someone to do something for you, instruct someone na, okay, fix the clothes, turn off the lights. Yeah, so those examples. So that is a connective function. Then we have referential function. So corresponds to the factor of context and describes a situation, object, or mental state. The descriptive statements of the referential function can consist of both definite description and deictic words. Okay, the autumn leaves have all fallen now. Referential, reference. Okay, take note of the term reference. Meaning to say, you are referencing, you refer to something and describe that something. When you opt to describe specifically of a certain object or things or situation, so that is referential function. Okay, so your the purpose of this function is merely on description, descriptive. Kaya sabi, describes a situation, object or mental state. So when you say, I am hungry now. I am hungry now. So you're describing what you're feeling. Okay, the situation that you are currently hungry. And then you say, Mark, give me some food. Nagko-cognitive function ka na nun. Okay? So, that is a referential function. Okay? So, balikan natin the different functions. Okay, Phatic function is more of opening, maintaining, verifying and closing a communication channel. Poetic function, um, the figurative meaning of what the person is intended to say, the meaning behind meanings. And then we have the metalingual function, which is something to do with being literal to what you are saying. Emotive function, wherein the interjections and the changes of the sound can actually affect the meaning of what the person is saying. And then cognitive function, it's more of giving instruction or command. I'm giving you already the keyword for you to remember those different functions according to Jakobson. And then we have referential function, descriptive languages are being used. Okay, so those are the things that Jakobsons would like to present to us when we are referring to the different functions of language. Okay, so I think it's very easy to remember those different functions. Just take note of those things that I mentioned. Now, if you will be asking, sir, is it possible that in a statement that there is crisscrossing of functions? Yes, that is possible. When you are in a conversation, oftentimes you crisscross you crisscross the different functions. Let's say in a statement, just like my previous example, wherein I am hungry. Mark, give me some food. So there are already two functions, or actually three functions that are reflected on that statement alone. It is it's a metalingual in a sense that you are literally saying that you are hungry. It is referential because you are describing that you are hungry. It is conative because you are instructing Mark to bring you food. So on that statement alone, we can say that there are already three functions that occur on one statement. So it's possible that there are crisscrossing of functions. Okay, so just to clarify it, should you be asking if that is possible to happen? Now let's proceed to Jeffrey. It's Jeffrey. My spelling is incorrect. Jeffrey. So Geoff Rey, Jeffrey, as in Jeff Eigenman, yung Jeffrey ni Jeff Eigenman. Okay, so Jeffrey Leech, if Jakobson has six functions, Leech only presented five functions. Okay, so let us see if they are similar or they are different on their description of the different functions of language. So let's have first the informative function. So according to Jeffrey Leech, the informative function of language involves information of giving and receiving. The general assumption is that the content is believable and valuable. For example, language is used to offer opinions, give advice, make announcement, lecture, admonish, or new support, solicit input, or ask questions. So if you're going to compare this to the first function of Jakobson, which is the first function, the Phatic function, we can say that Phatic function is very much particular with opening, maintaining, verifying, and closing a statement. But for Leech, in informative function, we can say that it's too broad for as long as a particular information is given, provided that information is believable and valuable to the persons who are into communication. Yun naman yung kanya. Regardless if you open, maintain, verify, or close a certain conversation. But for him, when we talk of informative, it is something believable and valuable. So that is the definition of Leech when we talk of informative. That is why on his example he mentioned of giving opinions, advice, etc., etc. Okay, so you yourself will be identifying if that particular information is believable and valuable to you. When we talk of valuable information, That depends on you. That depends on the recipient of the information. If the recipient of the information would say that this information could really help me, then that's valuable. If it is provide if the sender of the information would say that this thing is valuable to this person, sinabi niya lang it may be an unsolicited information. When we talk of unsolicited, meaning someone is not asking it for you to give. Instead, you just voluntarily give that information. We call it unsolicited information. It is solicited information if you're asking someone to give you the information. But if it's an unsolicited information and you think that is valuable to the person who will be receiving it, then that is an informative function. So there are two situations that we are looking at here, from the perspective of the sender of the information and from the perspective of the receiver of the information. Okay, so expressive function. Language expresses and evokes ideas, thoughts, and feelings. Expressive language may or may not include any real information because the purpose of expressive use of language is to convey emotion. Okay? For example, the expression "yuck" connotes disgust, but the word itself isn't necessarily used to inform. Okay? So, expressive is only just a way of uh, your main purpose here is not just to give information, but to just express your your thoughts and feelings. So when you say that you say yuck, so you just would like to express that your disgust. Okay, there's some instances kasi 'di ba, when we do have our when we do have our thoughts, when we do have our thoughts and feelings, we just uh, you just have to retain that in your mind. Sa utak mo lang yon. But if you would like to express that, to present what you really feel about a certain situation, then expressive function is very much used. When you say wow, when you're very much excited, and then you're opening a gift and you just say wow. Okay, so you just would like, you're not uh, giving a real information, but you just would like to express the happiness that you feel. Okay, so that is an expressive function. When you shout, say sumigaw ka lang basta. Ha, o sumigaw ka lang ng nagpamura ka lang ng F na malakas, yung F word, na bad word. You just would like to express your disappointment. Okay, so expression of feelings. Okay, so that's it. That is an expressive function. But again, not necessarily to inform someone. Aesthetics. Sir, ano po yung counterpart ng expressive doon sa Okay? Meron pwede siya sa what you call this, the I think it has a counterpart itong sa aesthetics. So the use of language for the sake of the linguistic artifact itself, yung poetic function. Yan, poetic function. The use of language for the sake of the linguistic artifact itself and for no purpose. This aesthetic function can have at least as much to do with conceptual as with affective meaning. The function is associated with the message the vehicle as the poetic or aesthetic function. The sign is taken as an end in itself. So when we talk about aesthetic function, it's similar with how we use the poetic function. Meaning to say, we are using a better sounding words, we are using figurative languages, we're using we're playing with the words, such as when you do slogan or when you write your poetry, deliver the poetry. When you are speaking in front of the camera, in front of the public, and then you're using flowery words to describe your ideas, then that's an aesthetic function. So your main purpose there is just to make the language sounds good, and aside from that, just to create a poetic effect when you are conversing with other people. That I think the keyword there is when you're using flowery words. Okay, flowery words, yung matatalinhagang mabulaklak na mga pananalita. And so that's a form of aesthetic function, the use of figurative languages when conveying your ideas. Then direct, from the terms of direct, sounds like connective function according to Jakobson. So language is used as a directive whereby we aim to influence the behavior or attitudes of others. The most straightforward instances of the directive function are when you're giving command and when you're asking a request. Okay, similar to what connective function is. By connective function, you're giving instruction, directions, commands to someone. Okay, it's similar with directive function. So we see the similarity of this function. It also has Phatic function. Okay, but how is it different from the Phatic function of Jakobson? So let us see. The function of keeping communication lines open, similar in keeping social relationship in good repair. Okay, so you see the similarities. Okay, this language function correlates with the channel of communication. It is used for opening, keeping, stopping communication. So similar with what Jakobson mentioned. Okay. Okay, so those are the different functions of language according to Leech. Okay, so we have the informative, when again the main purpose is to provide believable, invaluable information. Then expressive, wherein its main purpose is only just to express your feelings, but not necessarily mean to invoke or to mention of any information. For aesthetic purpose, it's more of, from the terms of aesthetic beauty, use of the figurative languages in order for you to deal when you are dealing with different people. So again, keyword is somehow when you're using some flowery words, and directive when you're giving commands and requests. And we have Phatic. So if we're just going to look at the similarities and the similarities of the similarities of these two functions, we can really see how they are similar in many ways. Okay, just like the use of Phatic by Leech and Jakobson, using the same term. It's only just a different term that they use. It's just so happened that they're only different when it comes to use of the referential function, which is in referential function is only reflected in Jakobson. Okay, so how we're going to call this to relate that referential function in Leech perspective. Maybe we can say that the description can also be attributed to um, informative function of Leech. Okay, so